Good morning, everyone. How's everyone today? My name is Emma, and I will be acting as a moderator for today's webinar on the topic of GRC 6.0. I am joined today by industry leaders Mike Rasmussen, Scott Jordan, and John Darbyshire. John Darbyshire is the CEO and founder of SmartSuite, and Scott Jordan is head of SoHo Dragon in New York City. To get things started, I'll turn things to John, but if anyone has questions specifically, we will have a formal Q&A session at the end of the webinar, so feel free to put your questions in the Q&A section.
Well, I just wanted to say I appreciate everyone joining the webinar this morning. My name is John Darbyshire, co-founder and CEO of SmartSuite. You may have known me from the past as the founder of Archer. That's the topic today. Goes back to some of the old discussions we had back in 2001 with Mike and Scott and others when GRC was just beginning to be its own space inside of a much broader industry. Kind of started out of information risk management, turned into governance, risk, and compliance. Today's webinar is really meant to share as much information as we can around our thoughts on GRC 6, which is kind of the next evolution of GRC. That will include Mike Rasmussen providing an overview and his thoughts from an industry analyst perspective. It will include my thoughts as kind of being the founder of Archer, the founder of SmartSuite, and the things that we do at SmartSuite around managing business processes, how that relates back to GRC just being another business process. And then we'll conclude with Scott Jordan really driving it home and showing a live demo and sharing his thoughts around embedded GRC as it relates to GRC 6.0. The agenda for today are the topics that I just mentioned. We'll start off with Mike with business integrated GRC. I'm sure that many of you are going to have questions as Mike kind of goes through this, so make sure that you hit the Q&A button here in Teams. Ask your question at the end of the presentation. Today we'll have a question and answer session. These typically, we set them for 15 minutes. They typically go a lot longer, so we'll stay on as long as we need to answer questions that are coming in. So, but make sure that you get those in there. If you have comments as Mike or another one of us are discussing various topics that are there, please click on the comments and actually share your thoughts with other people that are on the webinar, and you can have discussions back and forth. And maybe to kick things off on the comment side, we'd recommend maybe if you just introduce yourself, maybe say the city that you're from and maybe your title. You don't have to do first name, last name, maybe just first name that's there. Don't need to say, the name of the company if you're not comfortable with that, but just maybe your title so people can kind of put your comments in perspective as they go through. For my portion, I'll be talking about GRC as just another business workflow from my perspective and how that fits into broader workflows inside of an organization. Again, Scott will do the demo, then we'll have the Q&A session that's there. We have a third slide here that I'm going to show now just to set the stage so that you know this is coming at the end. But at the end of the presentation, we'll give you the opportunity, if you would like to have more information, you can scan the QR code here, book a session with Scott and Tara to really drive into specifics of anything that you might hear today. SoHo Dragon has also been very gracious to offer a free compliance assessment consultation, included both the link to their website as well as the QR code here. But no, we'll show this at the end again when it kind of comes that time. So now I would like, without further ado, I'd like to introduce Mike Rasmussen and give Mike just a little bit of an introduction here. I think that most of you probably know Mike. His name has resonated throughout the world of governance, risk, and compliance for almost 3 decades now, about 28 years. We were calculating here a few days ago. A fun fact on Mike that you might not know is many consider him the father of GRC. He was involved in the initial discussions around the formation of GRC, and that really related to the definition of modeling of the initial GRC 1.0 market. This was while he was at Forrester at the time as the lead analyst at Forrester. I've had the privilege of working with Mike and knowing Mike since about 2000, maybe 2002, kind of in that time frame. That's the time that I founded Archer. Mike was the lead analyst in that space, information risk management, that grew into GRC. So we had lots of great conversations about the future of GRC, how we saw that beginning to evolve inside of organizations. We spent a lot of time talking about the role of the Chief Information Security Officer. Many of you probably remember Steve Katz, who just passed away from us maybe a month ago, as kind of the first CISO that was in the space. He was involved in many of those conversations as well. We also had a lot of conversations just about risk management and risk managers and the role that they play in organizations. And today that's become a reality. But back then it was a new concept. Those positions weren't in most Fortune 500 companies at that time. Today, Mike spends most of his time giving keynotes. He is the founder and CEO of GRC 2020. I think Mike's favorite part of his job is having the opportunity to talk with product vendors that are in the space to understand the services and products that they have to offer and how they fit with what his customers are asking for. And the last part of that is I think he loves to spend the majority of his time actually meeting with organizations that are consuming GRC products and services, understand how they're consuming them, understand what they like and don't like about their different offerings, and then share with them the future of GRC from his perspective. Mike, that was a long-winded bio, but I will turn things over to you and let you kind of kick things off here.
Sounds good. So hopefully everybody can see my screen now. Let's talk about business integrated GRC, but first some context. The modern organization is what I call navigating chaos. And this is even much more so than it was 20 years ago when this whole GRC space started 21 years ago. But think about it. The modern organization is changing minute by minute, second by second. Laws and regulations are changing. If you go by Thomson Reuters figures, the global financial services firms are dealing with 257 regulatory change events every business day, coming from 1,217 regulators around the world. That's just one industry. New laws and regulations, change laws and regulations, enforcement actions, guidance, 257 regulatory change events globally just in financial services every business day. But then you have a changing external risk environment, geopolitical risks, economic risk and uncertainty, inflation, disasters, they all impact our business. But then you look internally into the business, you've got changing employees. They enter the organization, they move about, they change roles, they exit the organizations, there's changing processes and technology. Gosh, 15, 16 years ago, we were dealing with social media policies. Then 10 years ago, bring your own device policies. 5 years ago, Internet of Things policies. Now, artificial intelligence use policies. Technology changes and impacts the organization. But the business processes change, mergers and acquisitions bring in a lot more complexity and redundancy. And then the modern organization is not defined by brick and mortar walls and traditional employees. The modern organization is an extended web of third-party relationships, the vendors, suppliers, outsourcers, service providers, contractors, consultants, and more. And we have to keep all this change in sync. We can be completely knowledgeable about the law and regulation and answer every question on it. But if that process changed and the controls aren't in place, or that employee wasn't aware of the policy and was never read the policy or trained properly, we're no longer compliant. We have to keep all this change in sync. It reminds me of the quote from the physicist Fritjof Capra. The more we study the major problems of our time, the more we come to realize they cannot be understood in isolation. They are systemic problems, which means that they are interconnected and interdependent. And this is the challenge of GRC today, is that we have interconnected risk. We can't be dealing with all these different silos of risk that don't give us the full perspective and the impact on the business. We need full visibility into risk and objectives of the business and the compliance, and as it works within business processes, not additional layers of Band-Aids. Because risk is very interconnected. What starts with one risk cascades into a variety of other risks in the organization. But a lot of organizations, the way they've approached GRC reminds me of the Winchester Mystery House in San Jose, California. This is a sprawling mansion built in the 1800s. It cost $5.5 million to build then. That's one very expensive house today when you calculate inflation. It took 38 years to build, but it had no blueprint, no architect, no design, but it had 147 different builders all nonetheless. At the end of the day, it has hallways that go to nowhere, staircases that go down to nowhere, doors that open to walls or 20-foot drops, skylights that are in floors instead of ceilings. It doesn't make sense. But that's a lot of how we've approached GRC in the past, that we've had 147 different builders of GRC in the organization doing their things, from IT security to enterprise and operational risk to audit to now ESG and corporate compliance and legal, going a lot of different directions. And nobody has good visibility. And we haven't really built this into the business. There are layers of complexity on top of the business instead of being something that's addressed within business processes themselves. And that is a huge concern. Now, if we roll back and look at the definition of GRC. And I'll just state, I think a lot of GRC approaches are not GRC approaches. They're CRG or they're CR or they're just C. But if we're really starting with the G, it's about governance. And I like the OSEG definition of GRC, that GRC is a capability that enables an organization to reliably achieve objectives. That's the governance function. And that's where we build GRC into the business. What are the strategic objectives of the organization? The entity level, division, department, process, project, asset level objectives, or even relationship level objectives in a third-party relationship. That provides context to address uncertainty. ISO 31000 says, risk is the effect of uncertainty on what? On objectives. There's a relationship there. But then we also have to act with integrity to our values, to our regulatory obligations, and other commitments. So GRC is a capability that enables an organization to reliably achieve objectives, address uncertainty, and act with integrity. Too often we get this backwards. We focus on the C and ignore the R and the G, and particularly the G. But if we do this right, we're going to bake this into the business, and it's going to be part of the business. Teddy Roosevelt, the U.S. president, stated it so well. Risk is like fire. If controlled, it will help you. If uncontrolled, it will rise up and destroy you. Addressing risk correctly in a business context is a tool for the business. You know, John Paul Jones, a famous U.S. Revolutionary War naval hero, he stated, it seems to be a law of nature, inflexible, inexorable, that those who do not risk do not win. Risk is part of life. Risk is part of business. The business that's not taking risk is out of business. Further, you look over to Judge Mervyn Keane of South Africa. He's the impetus for the Keane 1, 2, 3, and 4 reports on corporate governance. He said, business is the undertaking of risk for reward. Now, we take risks. The organization that has no risk is an organization that does not exist. You know, and so are we taking the right risks? And how do we manage risk in the context of our business context? I was teaching my Risk and Resilience Management by Design workshop in Amsterdam in September, just a couple months ago. And I had a chief risk officer of a European life sciences firm there. And he said that when he got hired as the chief risk officer, the CEO walked up to him and said, okay, so you're going to be the new chief risk officer. Tell me what that means to me. And he looked him, the CEO back in the eye and said, my job as your chief risk officer is to ensure that you have no surprises in achieving your objectives. That was one of the most brilliant answers for risk management or GRC in general that I've ever come across. It's about making sure that the business has no surprises in achieving its objectives throughout its strategic objectives, but its operational objectives as well. And how do we integrate and bake risk compliance into the business itself? A good GRC executive, or let's say a chief risk officer, is the conductor of risk. And there's a lot of different departments and functions. You know, you look at an orchestra, and we'll make it simple, a chamber orchestra. You got the violins and violas and cellos and bass, you know, and they all have their different parts they play. And even within those groups, they might have different parts. Now, the role of a chief risk officer is to make sure all those parts are playing correctly and not getting out of sync with each other. And that's the role of chief risk officer, is to be able to see across the business and all these different risk areas. I was working with one large organization in Europe right now that has 12 different scattered risk functions that they're trying to conduct the risk and make sure that they all work together. But that also means that we need to be able to manage GRC in the rhythm of the business itself and the cycles and patterns of the business. You know, and this is a concept that I actually borrowed from Brad Jewett when he was the enterprise risk manager at Microsoft, and he's now the CFO at Corel Corporation. But he wanted to manage risk in the context of Microsoft's life cycle in business, not just these routine periodic risk assessments, but how do we clearly define what the objectives are for different departments and functions and roles and executives, and how do we provide relevant risk information in the context of that, in the context of the cycles and patterns of the business of the organization. But organizations today need to be resilient, and we need greater business resilience and operational resilience. Based on my blogs earlier this year, one large global hospitality firm that I've interacted with is rebranding their risk and assurance department to be risk and resilience, because they find that the business is scared of risk. You know, who wants to own a risk? They pass it around like a hot potato. That sounds awful. You know, but what business process owner, what business manager and executive doesn't want to be resilient? Particularly over the last several years with COVID-19, war in Ukraine, war in the Middle East, economic uncertainty, inflation risk, commodity risk issues, so much happening. We need resilient business. But if I'm running down the trail and I trip, resilience is how quickly can I recover from a risk event. And we need resilient business processes, but we also need risk agility to be able to see what's coming at the organization, to develop scenarios and see what's building on the horizon with horizon scanning, and prepare the organization to navigate the organization to select the best path forward. But we also need good risk accountability throughout the business. Accountability is different from responsibility. Responsibility is something I can give somebody else. I can give somebody else tasks and activities, but accountability is something I own and I cannot give to others. We're seeing a huge focus on accountability around the world. We have accountability regimes like the United Kingdom's Senior Managers and Certification Regime, Ireland's SEER, Hong Kong's Managers in Charge, Australia's BEAR, then it was FEAR, now it's called FAR, Financial Accountability Regime. South Africa has one now. I mean, these put senior management functions ultimately accountable for risk and compliance. Business functions ultimately accountable for risk and compliance. Under UKSMCR, Barclays' former CEO was fined £640,000 for a whistleblower infraction that he had to pay out of his bank account, not the bank's bank account. Earlier this year in April, TSB Bank in the United Kingdom was fined £40 million for a third-party risk failure, but the chief information officer, the CIO himself, was fined £80,000 for that same third-party risk failure that he had to pay out of his bank account. So we're seeing greater accountability. In the U.S., we're seeing a lot of focus from the SEC, Department of Justice, New York State, California. We've had Uber's former chief information security officer be held both civilly and criminally liable. And now the CISO for SolarWinds is being investigated for fraudulent statements by the SEC. We have a huge focus on accountability in the business. But risk and compliance doesn't just happen in the back office functions, the second and third line. The risk and compliance happens throughout the business. The teller at the bank, the doctor and nurse at the hospital, the insurance agent out there in the field, the coal miner in the coal mine, they're making risk and compliance decisions throughout the day. We need greater business engagement. We need GRC that's built into business processes, whether they're accounting processes like accounts receivable, accounts payable, procurement processes to HR processes, manufacturing processes, whatever it might be. We need GRC not to be these additional layers of Band-Aids, but something that's thought, how do we build this into the business itself? And through that, we can build and foster GRC business champions out there in the business that have accountabilities and responsibilities for risk and compliance, not just in the back office of the second and third line functions, but in the first line, the front office of the business as well. So organizations need to clearly define their GRC management strategy and how they're going to approach this, define their GRC management processes, and clearly, give a good hard think on how can we integrate these GRC processes and requirements and controls into business processes themselves instead of additional layers of complexity. And all that needs to be supported by the right GRC management information technology architecture. So I've defined 6 generations of GRC. And the GRC 1.0 started on a cold, snowy day in the Chicago office of Forrester Research in February 2002. And I had a vision for software that could address policies and controls and risks and all this in an integrated fashion. And I called it GRC. I had a broad view of GRC then, but what else happened in 2002 was Sarbanes-Oxley and Enron. And so we had the first several years of GRC. It was really the Sarbanes-Oxley captivity of GRC. And then we entered this GRC 2.0, which is what I call enterprise GRC, which really was more of my original vision on GRC. And how do we enable those second and third line functions, the back office of risk, compliance, audit, and security to work together? And then we moved into GRC architecture, GRC 3.0. And this is the whole concept, is that we can still have a core platform, but it needs a lot of integration. There's a lot of internal and external content like regulatory feeds and regulatory intelligence and change and information security information and things. It was an architecture, not just one platform. There can be a core platform, and there should be, but it requires integration to best of breed systems and other intelligence and business systems. But then we got a lot of complaints. A lot of the legacy solutions out there were breaking and stuck on upgrades. And so we entered the area of GRC 4.0, and we're still in this area. So when I talk about GRC 4.0, GRC 5.0, and GRC 6.0 is built on GRC 4.0. So we look at a solution today like Smart Suite, it is GRC 4, 5, and 6 all rolled into one. GRC 4.0 is this era of low-code, no-code solutions that are highly agile and configurable and adaptable to the business and doesn't cost a fortune to implement and maintain. Cognitive GRC is leveraging artificial intelligence technologies on top of agile GRC, and leveraging machine learning, natural language processing, generative AI, and predictive analytics and robotic process automation and more. And now we're moving into this era of business integrated GRC. How do we take all the wonderful things like what a Smart Suite delivers in agile cognitive GRC, and how do we build this more into business processes themselves instead of additional layers of complexity, cost, and control? Some key components of looking at agile, cognitive, and business integrated GRC is highly usable and engaging, not just for back office functions, but for the front office. I was talking to a firm on their RFP last week, and their number one requirement is simplicity and engagement, not for back office functions, but for the business that owns and takes risk. We need systems that are highly usable, low cost of ownership to implement and maintain, highly configurable and adaptable to the organization in a no-code type environment that can scale, adapt, and integrate, provides robust analytics, is leveraging artificial intelligence, and doesn't break on upgrades. So my quick 5-step plan for GRC, you need to understand where you're at today and where do you want to be 6 months, 12 months, 2 years from now, your current state and your future state, and your path to get there. From there, you need to get the right team on board. Who needs to be part of this journey? And what other departments and functions, how are they going to work together? But the key element is critical. You want to select the right equipment for the task. A lot of these solutions in the market add additional layers of complexity and cost and don't really provide significant business value all the time. We need to be able to provide technologies that can actually not only manage governance, risk, and compliance, but also can manage the business itself. But then, of course, you need to break things up into stages that are achievable and so that you don't fail, and be prepared for change in your organization, because that's pretty much apparent. There's going to be risk and regulatory change and business change. We have to keep all that in sync. But the value of business integrated GRC is to make things more efficient and time saved, money saved, more effective in reducing risk exposure to the business, more resilient to find issues and recover from them, and agile in a very dynamic business environment. Good, mature GRC that focus on integrating things into the business should help the organization achieve business objectives, ensure risk-aware setting of objectives and strategic planning, define the organizational culture, increase stakeholder confidence, prepare and protect the organization while preventing, detecting, reducing adversity and weakness, motivate, inspire, desired conduct, stay ahead of the game, improve responsiveness and efficiency, and optimize economic value. So with that, we're aiming for business integrated GRC. We're more aware of our risks in the context of business and business processes. We're aligned to work together. We're responsive to changes in our regulatory and business environment. We're agile in seeing what's coming at us. We're resilient to find issues and recover from them, and doing so and leveraging a no-code type solution like Smart Suite that's efficient in our use of human capital and financial capital resources. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to my good friend, John Darbyshire. I've interacted with him in his Archer days, as he mentioned, but now Smart Suite. But I'm also honored to be able to call him a friend and not just a business contact. And so, John, over to you.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate your insights here. All right, so let's jump back in. I wanted to first just provide a quick overview of Smart Suite and how we fit into this discussion that Mike just talked about in GRC 6 that really kind of goes back to GRC 4 and 5 as well. So Smart Suite is an organization that can help you manage any business process or project in your company on a single platform. Think of Smart Suite as business integrated workflows, and GRC is just one of those workflow elements that's there. What I'm going to do now is just provide like a 5 to 10 minute demo of some of the core concepts of a no-code platform like Smart Suite and how they help support this business integrated workflow concept or business integrated GRC into the core workflows of an organization. I'll do that first by let me give you just a quick overview of Smart Suite. So as an organization, we've been around for about 4 years. We spent the first 2.5 years as an organization with about 100 developers to build the core platform that we have before we released to our first customer. As of today, we have about 6,000 customers, over 100 different countries, the products in 15 languages. We span over 50 different verticals that we have customers in: banking, credit unions, technology, healthcare, manufacturing, real estate, construction, professional services, marketing agencies, on and on, including GRC, and that many of those organizations that I just talked about have GRC components that are built into the workflows that they do today. And what I'm showing you here on the screen right now, this is our own implementation of our product inside of our own organization. I just wanted you to see some of the types of workflows that are in for a product company that's here. So obviously we start off with our goals and initiatives that map down to every department, that maps to every initiative that we're focused on, every objective that's there, all the way down to the person that's responsible for supporting that. In GRC, that helps you understand kind of the playbook of what's in place for the organization over time. And each of those are then linked back to the different types of GRC processes we have. For us specifically, we're a software development company, so we manage all of our software development, our product management, our partner programs, our marketing. You see we have our standard operating procedures, compliance center that just has everything in one place. We do our vendor assessments, our business continuity. We track our policies, cybersecurity policies, just all the policies of the organization, as well as our sales CRM, on and on that's there. To do the demo, I'm going to jump into a different account that we can play with without seeing live information here. What I'm showing here is these are what we call solutions. A solution is just a workflow, and workflows can be connected to each other. So I can share data from goals and objectives to a project. I can share that back into the risk register or risk work that I'm doing back into marketing programs. So everything can be fully connected, and that's what I'm going to begin to show you here. To kick things off, I'd say I'm going to click on add a new, what we call solution. Think of it as a workflow. And out of the box, we have 200 different workflow templates that are available for you to get started with across about 35 different business categories. So let's say that you said, hey, we need a sales CRM, right? We're in sales. What can you help us with in sales? These are all the core processes inside of sales. Maybe you're a project manager interested in the different types of projects that need to be connected. Maybe professional services, product, legal, compliance, but let's click on GRC as an example. So here are core processes that we have templates for that all interconnect in regards to GRC that's there. What's important about this is that each of these templates can be linked back to the core process that you might be supporting that's here. And that's what we're trying to show across all these different processes we have in place. There may be things happen in legal and they need to have insight into some of the risk assessments that are taking place in real time that's there. So you're able to do that. So I'm going to click out of here as we've already set a few things up to kind of show the concept itself. I'm just going to click on risk management, and I'm not going to focus as much on how the risk register and the exception requests and things work. I'm going to just talk about the concepts of no code, and Scott is going to, in the next 15 minutes, is going to really drill in and show you some things live that are here. So in this particular case, I'm inside of this workflow called risk management. I have set up different tables of information. A table is just a collection of fields and data that you want to collect. And in my case, I have a risk register. I've set up exception requests, BIAs, issues, and findings. You could add as many of those as you want. Inside of each one of these, let's say the risk register, you see a listing of fields like we're showing here. And this is just a view into the information. If I want to see all of the data elements, I can click and actually look at what we call a page or a form, where now I have all of the fields that I have set up on here. If I have the rights and I wanted to change around the information, you can just use drag and drop to move the data around on the form the way that you want. You can add sections. You could have sections expand and collapse by default that are there. I could add permissions on fields so that only certain users can edit or view data in a particular field. And I'll go into that in a little more detail in just a second. And then we give you different options on how you can actually display the information on the page. So I'm looking at it at a 2-column format. Maybe I wanted something simpler. I could switch to a 1-column. What's pretty common is a lot of people like to use a 70-30, but we give you options to change that on the fly, and you just saw how easy that I was able to do that. That's there. To add a new field inside of your table, there's a couple of ways to do that. It's pretty simple. I just click here on add new field. We have 44 different field types that allow you to build these concepts, these attributes into your tables that's here, from just pretty simple things to more complex. I'm going to click here just to show a listing of all of them at once. So just basic things like text and text areas and numbers, dates, times, percents, phone numbers, emails, addresses, What's important about all of that is they're all data validated. So as users are entering information in, you can validate that the content going in meets the standard of an email address, a phone address, what that might be. We have more collaboration related things where you can provide ratings on things. People can vote on topics. You could add tags, link to social networks. We allow you to have projects, so you can have assignments to people that have due dates with durations. You can track % complete and the status of those items. You could do less formal tasks that are more checklist related. You can track time, whether manually or through an auto timer. And then things that where I could maybe link to other records, add buttons, counts, roll-ups, formulas, those types of things. To add a field, I'll just show you just briefly. It's as simple as I could just click on the field type. It says, okay, what would you like to call this? We see it's a single select. I could just call this John Test for an example. It says, how would you like to display the information in the select list? And most of the field types have multiple ways that you could select. So this one's saying, I just want a color dot with the name. This, I just want a pill, which is most standard. Maybe I want to add an icon in front, or maybe just text itself. So I'll just go back to this. And now I can add each of the individual values that I want to build that values list. And when I save it, it's now available for me to use and select values that I have. It's just that quick. And that's what no code is all about. No code is about using drag and drop to configure workflows and making it easy for the people that have the domain knowledge to understand how to set things up in the way that they would like to have them set up. Once I've set my data up and I have my forms in place, I can now visualize that data in many different ways. So right now we're looking at basically a risk register with all items that are here. If I wanted to change the fields that are actually displayed in this report, I could just click on additional items. I could remove items. Everything is updated in real time. I could change the sort on these. I could add a filter. Every field type that you have inside of your table, you can filter data on. The same with grouping. So in this particular case, I'm grouping by the assessment type and the risk type, but maybe I wanted to change that to something else. You can see things just change in real time as you change the groupings that are here. This is the single select field that I just added that was there. You could also very easily change the order of those groupings inside of the form as well. You could add color coding. You could find, and as a concept, if you have rights, you have the ability to take the information that you've included in this particular view, and you can share that outside of your organization, like a spreadsheet if you would want. And then you have the ability to determine if those users can interact with this data, or if this is just, you just want them to see the data that's on the screen that's here. So those are some of the key concepts that are here. When you talk about view types, I can display the information in grid formats, cards, Kanbans, calendars, timelines, Gantt charts, maps, and dashboards that are here. And to do that, we have some set up already. If I wanted to just see a card view of items, I could drag things around on the card. I could change the location of that into different groups that's there. If I click on dashboard's just a concept that allows you to pull data from not just any table that you have in this solution. You can pull data from any other solution in any table into a dashboard. So if I want to look at something that kind of spans workflows, I'm able to do that. This is just a pretty simple dashboard where I've set up some key metrics that I want to track and do comparisons with some charts that are here. To add a new, what we call widget in the dashboard, you just click add widget with lots and lots of widget types, from comparison and progress metrics to different types of charts. You can embed conferencing that you might do on a project that's in here, design elements, Google Docs, custom code, just on and on, that allow you to just click that, build it, bring it right into your dashboard, and then you configure it. This concept here kind of sets the stage for what Scott's going to talk about in a minute, in that we're actually showing the data model of this particular solution in real time and the connection points that are here. Now I could change that, and I could say I want to see, maybe the sales CRM data model or third-party risk data model that's here. Or I could say I want to see the full data model for everything that's included, not just that one particular element, and see the connections between these and the other workflows that are there. So visually, we try to make it very easy for you to be able to maintain and see the data schema that you have set up. From a compliance perspective, I'll share just a couple of things very quickly with you. We'll go back into the risk register. We'll click back into a record that's here. Two important things to note here is that when I click on view activity history, we track history up to 7 years that shows the date and time of every change that was made to that record by any person that's here. And it shows the current value and the prior value for you that's there. We also allow you to have built-in comments. And comments allow you to have discussions in the context of this particular record. Maybe you're doing an assessment with other people on your team. And it's as easy as saying, hey, I want to add a comment. And maybe I wanted to mention Tara on this comment. I can ask Tara to do something for me. It notes that when you mention somebody, it says, do you want to assign that as an actual task to Tara? So I could say, yep, please notify her, but let her know it's a task. Now, only Tara or myself can come in and mark this as complete, but other people could see the work that's getting done and add replies in context back to this. So the comments are for people that are inside of SmartSuite and that are working, but you also have the ability, maybe if you're working with someone outside of SmartSuite, like a vendor, I could actually interact with them through the same context. I could set up different templates that I may want to have in place that pull data from the form. Maybe it's you're onboarding a new vendor for the first time. So we could pull data from the form, welcome the vendor, send information. But what happens here is it sends it to your work email or the email that you set up, but we send the email from here as well. And then any replies back to that email are tracked in the context of the communication center. So it gives you one place to track and view the information associated with that. A couple more things just briefly so that you understand how no-code platforms manage permissions. In this particular case, I'm going to show you, I could come into this particular workflow and I could say, who do I want to have access to this? I could say, hey, anybody that is in my account can have access. Maybe I want to break this down and say, I only want these particular teams to have access that's here. What's most common is advanced, where I come in and I pick people or groups and I say the level of access that I would like for them to have. So if in this case, I would pick Brian. I could click and say, all right, do I want him to have full access to everything? Or I could say, hey, he can create and edit his own content, but only view other people's content, or a contributor, or people can only see content that's assigned to them, or they can only comment on content that other people have created but not updated. So what this allows you to do is have record level permissioning that's set for each record that's in place here. We do the same thing for field level permissions. So I could have access to the solution. I could determine access to the records that I want them to see, but I could also take it down to the field level. So now I could say, I only want Brian to be able to view information in this particular field, or maybe I don't want Brian to even know this field is there, and I take away all permission that's there. I could do that based on a person, on a group, and I could also say, I want everybody to see this with the exception of these 3 people. I don't want to be able to see it. So permissions is baked into everything in SmartSuite. And when a person logs in, they're only going to see the data based on the permissions that you've set up for them. The last piece that I'll talk about here is the concept of automation. Automation allows you to perform actions on your data in an automated way based on when certain things are taking place. So I could say when a new record is created, then I want to, and I can maybe update that record. I could send an email to somebody, or I could integrate with other products where maybe I want to send something in Slack or Twilio or Microsoft Teams, Google, Microsoft, HubSpot, Jira, Salesforce. The list goes on the actions that you can take. And if I said I wanted to update a record, it just steps you through the process of, okay, what would you like to do when this particular trigger is enacted? Then it can perform that action. It might be in the case of on your risk register, if certain risks meet a certain criteria that certain people need to be notified, or you need to escalate something that's happened if the time has passed. It allows you to do those types of things. The last piece I'll show you here is just from an integration standpoint. So SmartSuite is integrated with quite a number of platforms that provide a lot of great functionality with a direct integration. You don't have to write any code to be able to do this. You can just use drag and drop. So you can kind of see all the native types of integrations that we have. What's key is if you need to integrate with third-party products, maybe you need to put a front-end portal for third-party vendor management system on top of SmartSuite. When your vendor logs in, you show them just information about them. we have 4 different vendors that can do that for you, that setup that's there. But we also work with companies like Zapier, Make, Ply, that have integrations across these 3 to 5,000 other products that are fully integrated with SmartSuite right out of the gate. So any no-code platform is going to do a really good job of getting data in and getting data out from an integration standpoint that you have in place. All right, I feel like I covered a lot of information. There's a whole lot more that I could share, but if you are interested in more, we'd love to have the opportunity to provide a demo. But let me now take a few minutes and just introduce Scott, and he's going to drive into some specifics that are more specific to this GRC 6.0 concept. So it's my pleasure to introduce Scott. He's the Vice President of GRC Advisory Services at SoHo Dragon. SoHo Dragon is a certified SmartSuite partner. They consult with our joint customers and provide GRC advisory and implementation services to them. Scott's been in the GRC field for over 20 years, known him for quite some time as well. He's had leader positions at Deloitte, KPMG, RSA Security, and Archer Experts. And without further ado, I think, Scott, I will turn this over to you.
Thank you, John. Pleasure. You seeing my screen okay, John?
We are, yes.
Great. Thanks, everyone. I appreciate your time today. It's such an honor to present alongside two gentlemen that not only define the industry, but continue to evolve it, form it, and reform it, and narrate it. So an incredible pleasure here today. Since we're talking about the evolution of GRC, I just cannot help myself. I have to tell you my personal anecdote with how fast I saw this industry growing right out of the bat when John actually hired me back in the 2000s. I was in healthcare IT at the time. He brought me over to GRC in the 2000s. I ran into an old colleague at the Atlanta airport, where I'm from, if that's not obvious yet. And I ran into him and he said, where did you end up? Where did you go? I said, I'm working with a local GRC firm in Kansas City. He says, GRC? This is in the 2000s, Barry. He said, GRC, I don't know what that is. What does it even stand for? Tell me what that is. So I gave him the 30-second elevator pitch on what GRC was. Our team at the time, it's a small team of only males at the time. I finished my little pitch with him and he says jokingly, so what you're telling me is it really stands for guys rambling about compliance. So we had a good chuckle. I said, good one. That's a good one. I'll keep that in my back pocket and repeat it in 15 years on a call with John. And then within 6 months of that conversation in the Atlanta airport, I get a call, same guy. And he says, Scott, you know that firm I was working with? We just got dinged with an SEC violation. We just got data breached, and we're also out of SOX compliance. I think we're going out of business. Do you have a job for me? Absolutely. We brought him on. He's still there working in that product to this day, 15 years later. So that was my baptism into the impact, the depth, and the trajectory at the time of GRC. And it continues today. As Mike said, 6 evolutions later, it's only growing, it's only getting faster and more imperative to your business processes. I'm not going to spend the time in the PowerPoint here. I just want to level set. I find, yes, I'm going to get to the demo. Just give me 3 minutes to level set, please. I know pixels on screen are important. However, if I go straight into the weeds, maybe the forest is not always as clear as to why we built this system using SmartSuite, what business problem we are solving with that, and moreover, why did we choose SmartSuite? I'll be honest with you, SmartSuite has more partners than SoHo Dragon. Guess what? SoHo Dragon has more partners than just SmartSuite. We specifically chose them for this use case for a reason. Real quick on SoHo, okay, we're out of New York City, hence the name. Been around for 13 years now. Started in Peter's apartment. Peter's our CEO, started in his apartment. We grew globally. A few years later, launched a CRM practice, went global overseas, India, London, Lithuania, and then a few years ago, launched our GRC practice. Now we're in 5 countries and 3 continents. Even though our GRC practice is a few years old, all my team has 10 to 15 years of GRC experience, hundreds of implementations to our portfolio. Okay, I want to get through this slide, and then I promise I'm going to jump into the system. It's sitting over here. I got many screens. It's just calling for me, and I know it's calling for you as well. Why did we build regulatory change management in SmartSuite? What business problem are we solving here? Before Traditionally, historically, compliance teams had to data mine through several repositories. They had to go to the various regulatory agency websites and figure out, is this a regulatory change that I have to track, or is it just an announcement? Are they just saying, hey, we're meeting in DC next month, and I don't really need to complete an assessment against this? Over on the left side, before, many repositories, many data stores, regulations websites, your policies, your controls, and they had to do an information mapping exercise between these things and map them to, is this actually a regulatory delta that I need to be tracking against per my business objectives that Michael was talking about earlier? Afterwards, what we've done here, we've got an integrated and unified GRC interface, okay? So we're going to bring, from a tool agnostic perspective, whatever regulatory intelligence tool you want to use. If you don't have one, we can make recommendations based on your budget, your imperatives, your regulations, and moreover, your frequency that you need to consume and assess this data. We're going to bring it into Smart Suite. Okay, we're going to launch an automated assessment. So it's just part, as Mike was talking about, it's just an embedded part of your day. You're going to log on to Smart Suite at 8 o'clock in the morning, or if you're me, 9:15. That's a joke for Peter. And then we're going to launch your dashboards. And we're going to tell you, instead of making you pull, we're going to push. It's always a push versus pull conversation. We're going to push this information to you. We're going to automate it. It's going to be an integrated, embedded part of your workflow using Smart Suite. Now, let me address, we have a GRC audience on the call. I want to address the elephant in the room. Is this a new concept? No. Okay, I'm going to tell you why we did it in Smart Suite. Okay, regulatory change management, regulatory intelligence has been around for a decade, maybe decade and a half. Mike might even say longer. Okay, I have built those systems in these large, hulking, ERP-style GRC systems with a huge footprint, and I have built them for the privilege of charging your firm between $400,000 and $600,000 a year in licensing. Okay, not to mention the $400,000 for year one implementation services, and not to mention the six-figure year-over-year run rate just to keep the lights on. Okay, there's also been tools that charge you 15, 20, 25 bucks an hour that will do 1/100th of what Smart Suite does. What Smart Suite, John and team have done is bring that together. Let's give you the rich, robust functionality while coming at you with an extremely economic price point. Okay, so the SMB market we thought was the small mid-market business market we thought was underserved. We know Fortune 1000, everyone's out there saturating that market. If you're in that space, that's great. This can also work for you. But the SMB market we wanted to service. Okay, I'm going to jump over to the actual instance now. Okay, here we are in Smart Suite, which John explained from a platform perspective, the extreme robust functionality that it does. Implementing several GRC systems, over 200 implementations in the past 14 years. What the Smart Suite platform offers is, I would say, a vast majority of what you can find in it. Okay, for 85% of what you will find in them for 1/20th of the cost. Okay, this is our regulatory change dashboard here. You log in if you're a CC, a chief compliance officer, a chief risk officer. I need to monitor these. Frankly, we all know that there are some regs that are a little bit more demanding than others. Okay, NERC SIP, that's for the energy and utility industry. That's a couple of times a quarter, maybe even more from a frequency perspective. FINRA, which is a private organization, they're going to come at you about once a year. Okay, so if I'm a CCO, I'll log in here. You can see the dashboards. I know it may be a little small, so I can blow it up easily here. So I'll drill into FDIC. If you're a bank, that's kind of important, right? That's an important regulation. You kind of want to keep an eye on that guy. Okay, I'm looking at here. You can see the applicable column. I see no, no. Why is it no? And keep in mind, this is sample data, but it is somewhat relevant to regulatory context and the spirit of the content you're going to get from your regulatory agencies. Number 71 here, that's a yes. Let me check it out. I'm a CRO, or maybe I'm just a compliance team lead. Okay, what exactly is going on here? Okay, sample agencies are jointly proposing some interagency guidance. That's a situation. That's 2 or 3 agencies that are coming together talking about some additional compliance regulations, some deltas. If there's 3 agencies involved, chances are I need to assess it. Okay, exactly what are we talking about? Well, here's the URL. We're just going to launch you right over to the agency. Read it for yourself. I'm not going to drain this content. We're running short on time, by the way, and we are willing to hang out after the top of the hour to take your questions. So we appreciate your patience. Okay, drilling down here again, I'm not going to drain the content. Basically, there's a regulatory change that the FDIC is announcing. However, as you can see from the metadata, there's 3 different agencies involved here. That is a situation as a compliance officer I need to assess or need to have my deputies assess. Here's your metadata. Here's the region. It's in the roll stage, proposed, etc. Is it applicable? As far as the workflow that we have built here, if no, then we're done. All right, go back to your dashboard and check out your other regulations. If yes, we have to continue assessing this situation. All right, what we built, we have issues. I understand those of you who have worked in GRC tools, issues versus findings versus actions. What's the story? In this context, what we're saying is the regulatory change is just content delta. Okay, you don't know if there's something that you don't know if there's action items to be taken against it yet. So we assign the issue to it, clicking in here. That issue is more or less a bridge to your controls. Okay, so if you have an issue, you need a mitigating control. Here's your existing control measures. I launch over to the controls. As I'm moving everyone through this navigational process, I'm moving across applications, across data sets, but it's seamless to the user. It's seamless. The Smart Suite is I love the next generation user interface. You're moving between modules, maybe even between solutions. The user doesn't know it. The user doesn't need to know it. They're trying to solve their business problem. Okay, so they're just moving seamlessly through the system as I navigate here. Okay, once again, here's some control metadata. This one is a combined automatic and manual. It's external because it's around regulatory third-party risk management. Okay. Kicking back, is there an action required? Once again, here's another checkpoint. It's another decision point. It's another branch. If I click no here, we're done. Okay, we cache this, we put it as part of, it's been assessed, we did not have any action items against it. Okay, but I've clicked yes, there is an action item yet. I don't know if there's a finding yet, but there is further investigation. There's something that needs to be done. In this case, we're going to establish an innovation team, what we often in our industry call tiger teams, basically a project team. Okay, we need to establish a team to assess further what the ramifications of this interagency announcement are. Okay. And then here's the pivotal point. I'm not going to call it the hub, but it is the central point of our workflow. If I check here, assessment required, yes. Okay, that's going to automatically launch an assessment to whoever I assign it to, presumably the compliance team or maybe regulatory risk team. I have clicked yes. If I were to click no, different situation. Now I'm going to launch over to assessments. Okay, the regulatory change assessment. This up here is metadata, which business unit, which business processes. I've been in rooms where we argued whether GRC should be tied to process or business unit, and I have spent hours, maybe weeks of my life having that discussion, but we were pinging both here. My personal opinion is GRC workflow should go to the process, right, instead of just the business unit. But again, that is a conversation you can have during analyze and design sessions. Happy to have them. The actual assessment that we've built is more or less here. What is the general impact of this change? What is the category? Anticipated timeline, financial impact. This is more or less this section, the assessment. Keeping in mind, per your business process, maybe you have this today, maybe you don't. It is easy to add. If someone were to tell me right now, I could add it in a few seconds. What your questions are, what your answers are, and what the branching workflow subsequent from those answers need to be from a dynamic perspective. Okay, Smart Suite is extremely easy to configure. Reason number 48 that we chose them as a partner for this particular solution. Okay, so here's our assessment. Did I have a finding against it? Yes. We chose yes. Okay, we did our assessment. There is clearly a financial impact of less than 100K. It's coming in less than 6 months. There is a finding. Let's check out what the finding is. And I know we're running short. I'm gonna bring it home here. I promise. Okay. Our finding was the operational risk training curriculum, et cetera, is a well-structured program. However, our review and response is we have a mitigating control. Okay, we have some TPRM controls against this particular regulatory delta. We have a tiger team that has addressed it. We now have an innovation team that has addressed it as well. So we have a mitigating control. That is the end of this particular workflow. It was ingested into Smart Suite. It was investigated. It was assessed. We're good. We have the control. Okay, so that's one particular workflow. I'm going to try to wrap up another one real quick before we get to questions, because we are up. I know we are up against it. There are many views that, as John talked about, this can be persona based. It can be privilege based, whatever. And once again, this functionality exists. It has existed for years if you want to pay $500,000. Okay. But what John and team have done is to give you the functionality as well as the price point. It depends on your number of users, but you can do everything John said, achieve the thing Michael said from a business perspective. It depends on your number of users, but you can do that for the price of, say, a high-end electric bicycle or a 20-year-old Toyota Camry, okay? It's very economic, it's very competitive, and it's very nimble. This is where I see the market going. It's federated, affordable solutions instead of paying $800,000 a year to do the same thing, okay? Here's my issues by impact. Obviously, if say I'm a team lead, or maybe I'm just a compliance analyst, these are not evaluated. That's a situation. I need to come in here, evaluate this, look at the rule. Okay, this is a sample FINRA change. Keep in mind, FINRA is a private organization. This is the other problem we're trying to solve. There is a taxonomy that is not always clear for compliance teams. You can have third-party authoritative sources. Then you can have actual regulatory agencies. Beneath that, you can have actual regulations that you have to comply with. And beneath that, you can have just recommendations from all of these guys above. It's very confusing for compliance team. You need some stratification of that. Example, NCUA, National Credit Union Administration. They have a tool called the ACET, Automated Cyber Examination Tool. It's just a recommendation. It's just a tool. You don't have to use it. It is a tool they provide you. Okay, but that can be confusing for compliance teams, right? Because if you are already using, say, NIST CSF, cybersecurity framework, then you really don't have to implement ACET. So stratifying that taxonomy and that hierarchy is another thing that digitization of a tool such as Smart Suite can help you achieve. Okay, so here I am in the actual filing requirements. Again, this is my workflow. Say I'm a compliance answer, a team lead. I'm just going in looking at my queue, what is outstanding for me? Okay, I got all the metadata. I have the controls tied in here. What are my action items? I need to start doing my assessment. At this point, I don't know because it's not been evaluated. Okay, so this is more at the individual contributor or team lead level instead of the executive level that, hey, this is my daily workflow. It's been pushed to me. Thank you for pushing it to me instead of me having to mine through 5 different repositories and 4 different spreadsheets and 6 different websites. That's what this automation is trying to achieve. Okay. With that said, I apologize. We're 2 minutes over, but we are willing to hang out. I had our master of ceremonies keep this line open for another hour if you want to sit around and discuss and talk. Emma, you are our master. You are our master of questions here, so I will kick it back to you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, everyone. It looks like we don't have anything currently, but I'm sure people are typing away right now, so we can maybe wait a couple minutes.
Yep, I have 3 or 4 questions that came direct to me, so I can ask those. I think
Perfect.
The first one actually goes to Scott. Scott, they're just interested to understand the types of services that are offered by SoHo Dragon around GRC. Can you just quickly describe those?
Yes, thank you, John, and thanks to the question from the audience. The way I try to articulate this is typically GRC consulting firms offer 1 or 2 of the 3 following services that I'm about to go through. One is GRC implementation services. That's what we can help you with Smart Suite. Smart Suite is fast. It's not going to take you the 6 to 8 months that you may have experienced in 2014 with other tools that I won't mention. Okay, so we can do the implementation services for your technical transformation. Number 2 is the GRC advisory. I had a conversation last week, but this bank, I'm not going to mention names, obviously, they wanted to have 2 findings applications. I had to convince them why that's a really, really bad idea. That's the advisory piece of what we do. And 3 is to build point solutions like the one you're looking at on top of Smart Suite here today. We do all 3 of those services, but once again, Smart Suite is fast, it's lean, it's a light footprint. It's not going to take you the weeks and months that you're used to. So thanks for the question. Thanks, John.
Yeah, I think the next one is for Mike that came up. And the question is, how do you feel Smart Suite fits into the broader GRC market that are more GRC, where there are more GRC specific solutions?
I think the Smart Suite is a highly agile solution that is very relevant for the small to mid market, but I don't want to downplay, because I think it also plays a lot of relevance for the large enterprise that have a lot of risk and compliance processes that they need to be built out and customized and configured. One of the things that needs a lot more clarity in this space is, what we call low code, or more particularly no code solutions. And a lot of people are throwing around that label. A lot of solutions are thrown at that label, but it means different things. There are some that are no code solutions that are in the market. In fact, I can think of some that are in the latest Forrester GRC wave that just got published that are extremely rigid. You can't adapt them. You have to adapt your risk, compliance, audit, internal control processes the way it was designed, instead of it adapting to yours. And they call it a no-code solution, but because it doesn't need code, but it also isn't agile and configurable. That's one of the things about Smart Suite is its agility and configurability. It's a no-code solution that you can adapt to your business process. The economic side of Smart Suite makes it very appealing to a small to mid market that hasn't been able to afford a lot of GRC systems. But it's also, because of its flexibility and agility, is very adaptable to a lot of the needs of large organizations too.
Thanks, Mike. For the sake of time, I'll just run through these next few pretty quickly here. The first one is, can you share any insights on reference customers for Smart Suite? Sure. I'll give you just a broad overview. We have customers that range from a couple of people to Fortune 500 companies, everything in between that's there. On the GRC side, we work with a lot of banks, credit unions, but we also have, just like Mike was saying, a lot of mid-tier companies across manufacturing, real estate, construction, healthcare, just all over, that are using different portions of our GRC kind of built into their core workflows. One of our larger customers on Wall Street that will be doing a webinar here in January is Apple Bank. They use this for legal and compliance activities, as well as internal processes that are there. I think if you're interested in more, Tara and Scott could share more details and examples and provide reference checks if needed. That's there. There's also a question just came in asking for what is the price point of Smart Suite and how does it compare to the other providers? I'll just share my perspective of Smart Suite and not talk about the providers, but Smart Suite, if you're interested, you can just go to our website, smartsuite.com, look on the pricing page. Everything is fully transparent. We have a free plan that helps people get started, up to 3 users. We have a free 14-day trial that you can start, no credit card, if you just have an interest. You can download any of the solutions that we've talked about today that I showed you in the solution library and play around with it. Moving into our paid plans, it starts at $10 per month per person for our team plan, and moves on our enterprise plan $42 per person per month. What's different maybe there than in the past with other products is when a person has access to Smart Suite, you're not limited to the number of workflows or solutions they have access to. It's unlimited. So one person could have access to 20 different workflows and you're still paying just the same per user price point that's there. Mike or Scott, do you want to, either one of you want to take the second part of that question on how we compare to the price points of other people in the market? I think
Michael, go ahead.
You mentioned that.
Yeah, I can't name other people's specific prices and things, but I mean, it's a fraction of the cost, and not just the acquisition cost, but the typical implementation and maintenance cost too.
Yeah, it's yeah. Mike, like Michael said, and same thing. We both have other partners, but it is fractional, light and lean. You no longer have to hire a team of 8 IT guys to manage the infrastructure, whereas it's sitting on your servers. It's on AWS, the market leader in security configuration. So extremely affordable. I encourage you to check out the site that John just pointed you to. I think you'll be incredibly pleased with the competitive nature of the pricing model.
Next question coming in is, how many partners does Smart Suite have, and do you have more partners on the GRC side than just SoHo? I'll answer that broadly. We have relationships with over 150 service providers that are certified on the Smart Suite platform around the world that provide services across any type of business process. SoHo is one of those folks. SoHo is one of our top 5 partners on the GRC side that we have. They offer just the full spectrum of services. They understand the product. They have people certified. It's there. We have other partners that have specialty in specific areas of GRC. SoHo Dragon kind of goes across the board. That's there. And The last one that I'm seeing here, does Smart Suite support AI concepts? And the answer to that is yes. We support it in 2 or 3 different ways in the product. We have a document called a Smart Doc, which is like a Google Doc that can be embedded as a field type, and that has built-in AI. You can actually interact with ChatGPT directly, ask questions. You can review content, summarize content. We have people using it to create initial policies, whether that be an HR policy, a development policy, or even a GRC related, like a cybersecurity policy with AI that's there. We also have AI Assist, which has been released in beta about 4 months ago that we're enhancing right now, that allows you to look back into your data set and actually make conclusions on the data that it's looking at that's there. And we also have another concept of AI that we're working on now that allows you to build AI into field types. And when certain activities take place, AI can help determine the action that should be taken from that point. So all of those are things that Tara and Scott could share with you on a session if you want. I'll also say that with the free trial that is available, you can download, and everything that we've talked about here is available for you to try out for yourself without any interaction from anyone on our side. And that is the list of questions that I have, unless anything has popped in.
And I see some in the chat. Maybe you can navigate this.
Yes, excellent. Someone is asking if Smart is SaaS-based. Do clients also have an option to select where the data resides?
Yeah, so Smart Suite, we're hosted on AWS. So we're a SaaS product. We are ISO certified. Our SOC 2 compliance report comes out here in just a couple of weeks. The audit is done, and now we're just waiting for the period to be done to get the report to be able to demonstrate. But the answer is we're 100% SaaS.
Great. Question about if this solution can integrate with my CMBD as a single sign-on and other corporate systems. Follow-up question on that. Okay. And can I use this for my third-party vendor assessments?
The answer is both. Yeah. So we have quite a number of people that use us just for those third-party assessments. Even some of our partners that are GRC consultants use us internally to actually manage their third-party relationships on Smart Suite.
Okay. How quickly can I get the compliance solution that Scott demoed up and running in my organization? I think we also have questions on how they can access the solution that was being demonstrated today.
Yeah, let me just share and show you how you can access it. I guess I'm still sharing. Let me go back in here. So you can come right in here to add new solution, start with a template. This is once you started a trial. If you go to governance, risk, and compliance on the workflows, you scroll down and you see this regulatory change management. If you want to learn more, you can click here on learn more. We'll tell you more about the solution. You can see various screenshots of the solution in action to kind of get an overview. If you want to use it, you just say use template. And in 5 to 7 seconds, it downloads the template directly into your instance. It's there, and then it shows up right here for you to click in and play. The way to get up to speed on that, the best, would be to have a 30-minute call with Scott and Tara once you download, and then Scott can go into understand your business a little bit more and give you an idea of the time it would take to customize that specifically for you.
Looks like we've covered all the questions in the chat, but we can wait a few minutes to make sure. We also appreciate feedback in the chat as well. So if you have any feedback or thoughts about today's event, that would be greatly appreciated as well.
Yeah, I think in conclusion, I'd just like to say thank you for Scott and Mike for joining us today, sharing your insights on GRC, and for the attendees taking an hour and 15 minutes out of your day to learn a little bit more about Smart Suite and how we fit into kind of the broader space of not just GRC, but managing any process that's there. And we love people that ask questions and interact with us. We're not a hardcore sales team. So if you just need to have conversations, please click on the links in the bottom right-hand corner of our website, and in our product, there's a link you can click on to start a live conversation with anybody on our team, if that's easier, and they will get you in contact with the right person if you have questions on GRC as well. Scott, anything you would like to say to summarize?
No, thanks everyone for your time. I see one more question about importing policies and controls into Smart Suite. Absolutely, you can do that. It takes a matter of seconds to import. As a matter of fact, the data you saw today, I think it took me about 18 seconds to import into a Smart Suite. So that is a yes. Yes, thanks for your time again. And thanks, John and Mike, for joining. It's a pleasure. I really hope you guys will follow up with us. Emma's put some contact information out there with a QR code. We will also be following up with some contact information for me and Tara to set up a specific demo, and Mike as well, should you want his services. Mike, any follow-up thoughts for you?
I think we've covered it all.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Well, thank you very much, everyone. Hope you have a great day. We'll see you on the next webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.